I was sitting in my small apartment in Phoenix, the kind of place people overlook when they drive past, when my phone buzzed. It was a normal afternoon, sunlight spilling through cheap blinds, the hum of traffic outside, nothing dramatic at all. Then I saw the message. My brother's name lit up the screen. We hadn't talked in months, not since the last family argument where I was once again painted as the irresponsible one, the failure, the sibling who never made it. The text was short, casual, almost entitled. I need a new car. Can you cosign? I stared at those words longer than I should have. Not because I didn't know the answer, but because of everything packed inside that sentence. Years of being ignored. Years of being compared. Years of being laughed at during Thanksgiving dinners while he was praised for mediocrity. I typed back 2 words, no emojis, no explanation. Keep dreaming. I hit send and tossed my phone on the couch, expecting nothing more than silence or maybe an angry reply. A few minutes later, everything changed. The phone buzzed again, then again. Messages started stacking up, not just from him, but from numbers I recognized all too well. My mother, my aunt, even my cousin who never spoke to me unless she needed something. The tone wasn't concern. It was panic mixed with accusation. My brother had apparently told them I was refusing to help the family, that I had become selfish, that I had forgotten where I came from. Same old story. Except this time, they were about to learn something they never expected. What none of them knew was that while they were busy underestimating me, I had quietly rebuilt my life. No announcements. No bragging. Just long nights, missed holidays, and sacrifices nobody cared to notice. After being laid off years ago and laughed at for chasing unrealistic dreams, I moved states, learned new skills, and started working in tech consulting. I didn't post about it. I didn't tell anyone. I remembered every insult, every joke about how I would always need help. So when my brother asked me to co-sign for a new car, it wasn't just about credit, it was about power. He assumed I was still beneath him. He assumed I needed the family's approval. He assumed wrong. His next text was angry. Wow, you've changed. Mom is really upset. I didn't reply. Instead, I let my phone sit while I made coffee, calm and steady, the way you feel right before a storm breaks. Then my mother called. I answered, not because I was scared, but because I was ready. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't ask why I said no. She jumped straight into guilt, family responsibility, blood, sacrifice. She reminded me of all the times they helped me, conveniently forgetting how that help always came with humiliation. I listened quietly, then said something I had never said before. I told her I couldn't co-sign because I don't co-sign for anyone. Not anymore. And then calmly, I told her I didn't need to. There was silence. I explained, without emotion, that my credit score was perfect because I built it alone, that I owned my car outright, that my income was higher than my brother's and her combined, that I was financially secure, not because of family support, but despite the lack of it. My mother laughed nervously, thinking I was exaggerating. That's when I sent the proof. Screenshots, bank statements, business registrations, pay stubs, not to brag, but to end the narrative. Within seconds, the tone shifted. The anger dissolved into disbelief. The guilt turned into fake pride. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked, as if the years of dismissal never happened. Word spread fast. My brother called next, his voice suddenly respectful, almost scared. He tried to joke it off, said he didn't mean anything by the text. That family should help family. I reminded him of every time he told me to be realistic, every time he mocked my plans, every time he introduced me as the struggling sibling. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult him. I just stated facts. He wasn't mad about the car anymore. He was mad because the hierarchy had flipped. The brother he thought was beneath him was now unreachable, untouchable, and unwilling to play the old role. That realization hurt more than any refusal ever could. By the end of the day, relatives I hadn't heard from in years were suddenly checking in. Compliments replaced criticism. Invitations appeared out of nowhere. I saw it clearly for what it was. Respect that only arrived once success was undeniable. And for the first time, I didn't feel the need to accept it. That night, I sat alone in my apartment again. Same quiet room, same cheap blinds. But everything felt different. I hadn't screamed. I hadn't begged. I hadn't taken revenge loudly. I simply told the truth and refused to be used. My keep dreaming wasn't arrogance. It was closure. My brother did get his new car eventually, just not with my name on it. And the family learned a lesson they never expected to learn from me. The one they underestimated didn't need them anymore. And that realization stayed with them far longer than any argument ever could. A few days passed after that. And the silence from my family was louder than any argument we'd ever had. No morning good luck messages. No random calls pretending nothing happened. Just space. And in that space, I realized something important. For the first time in my life, I wasn't anxious. I wasn't waiting for approval. I wasn't rehearsing explanations in my head. I felt light. Then, late one evening, my brother texted again. This time the tone was completely different. No demands, no assumptions, just a simple line. "Can we talk?" I looked at the message, not with anger, but with clarity. I knew why he wanted to talk. It wasn't about the car anymore. It was about control slipping out of his hands. I called him. He sounded tired, not stressed about money, but shaken. He admitted the dealership had rejected him twice. High interest rates, weak credit history, poor financial planning, things he used to lecture me about. He tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked when he said, "I didn't think it would be this hard." That was the moment I understood the real reason he asked me to cosign. It wasn't because I was family. It was because he was desperate, and I was the last option he thought he could pressure. He apologized. Not fully, not perfectly, but enough to reveal the truth. He said he always thought I'd stay where I was, that someone had to be the less successful one so he could feel ahead. He didn't say it cruelly. He said it honestly. And honesty, even late, has weight. I told him something he didn't expect. I said I forgave him. Not because he deserved it, but because I didn't want to carry that weight anymore. But forgiveness didn't mean access. It didn't mean signatures or money or stepping back into an old role. I told him he needed to fix his own mess the same way I fixed mine. Alone, quietly, responsibly. After that call, the family dynamic shifted permanently. At gatherings, people listened when I spoke. When I said no, they didn't push. When I stayed silent, they didn't fill the gap with jokes at my expense. Respect had replaced pity, and I hated that it took success to earn it, but I accepted the reality of it. Weeks later, my mother visited me for the first time. She looked around my place, noticed the calm, the order, the absence of chaos. She said almost to herself, "I didn't know you were this strong." That sentence healed something deep inside me. Even though it came years late, I never co-signed anything. I never sent money. I never bragged publicly. But I did something far more powerful. I stopped shrinking to make others comfortable. Now when my phone buzzes, I don't feel dread. I feel choice. And that's the real victory. Not revenge, not humiliation. Just the quiet confidence of knowing that when someone asks for more than they deserve, I can smile, breathe, and say no without explaining myself. Time moved on, the way it always does, quietly and without asking permission. Months passed, and with them came a strange shift I hadn't expected. My family didn't just treat me differently, they started hesitating around me. Conversations stopped being loud when I entered the room. Opinions softened. Jokes were filtered. It was subtle, but unmistakable. They were careful now. My brother, especially. He started sending updates I never asked for. New job interviews, budget plans, side hustles he was thinking about. It felt less like sharing and more like proving that he was still worthy, that he was still relevant. And every time I responded politely but briefly. Not cold, just distant enough to remind him that access to my life was no longer automatic. One afternoon, I ran into him unexpectedly at a grocery store near my place. He looked tired, older somehow. Not physically, but emotionally. The confidence he used to wear like armor was gone. We stood there for a moment, surrounded by shelves of things neither of us needed, and for the first time, there was no competition between us. Just two adults standing in the aftermath of years of imbalance. He told me he'd finally bought a used car. Nothing fancy. High mileage. But it was his. He said it with a strange mix of pride and embarrassment. I congratulated him sincerely. And I meant it. Because I knew how much it mattered to earn something without leaning on someone else. Later that night, I sat on my balcony watching the city lights flicker on. I realized how close I came, years ago, to becoming exactly what they expected me to be. Bitter. Dependent. Loud about my struggles, but unwilling to change them. That scared me. One wrong decision, one signature on the wrong paper, one more attempt to please people who only valued me when I was useful. The keep dreaming text replayed in my mind, not as a moment of defiance, but as a turning point. Two words that quietly drew a line I should have drawn long ago. That line didn't push people away. It revealed who respected boundaries and who only respected benefit. Family gatherings became optional instead of obligatory. I went when I wanted to, left when I felt like it. No explanations, no guilt. And surprisingly, the world didn't collapse. In fact, it expanded. I slept better. I worked better. I laughed more freely. One evening, as I sat on my balcony watching the city lights flicker on, I realized something simple but powerful. I didn't win by refusing to cosign. I won by choosing myself without making an announcement about it. Months later, my brother and I talked over coffee. No tension, no history dragging the moment down. He talked about mistakes openly, without defending them. I listened without fixing them. That balance was new for both of us. He wasn't looking for approval anymore. I wasn't offering rescue. Two adults, finally meeting at the same level. Family gatherings became neutral ground instead of emotional minefields. I didn't scan faces anymore. I didn't brace for comments. I showed up as I was and left when I was done. People noticed, but nobody challenged it. Confidence doesn't ask permission. I realized that the version of me they were comfortable with depended on my discomfort. Once I removed that, they had no leverage left. And without leverage, relationships either recalibrate or fade. Both outcomes are honest. Sometimes late at night, I thought about how different my life would be if I had said yes that day. If I had signed my name under someone else's responsibility. If I had chosen short-term approval over long-term peace. The image always ended the same way. Tired, resentful, trapped. I felt grateful for the strength I didn't know I had back then. I didn't become cold. I became selective. There's a difference people don't talk about enough. Coldness pushes everyone away. Selectiveness protects what matters. Self-respect has a quiet afterlife. Long after the conflict fades, it keeps shaping your choices in ways you don't even notice at first. I saw it in how I planned my future without checking if it aligned with anyone else's comfort. I saw it in how I stopped shrinking good news or softening firm decisions. My life no longer needed translation. My brother eventually told me he stopped asking family for help altogether. Not out of pride, but out of respect for himself. The day he told me he'd turned down an easy shortcut because it didn't sit right with him, I smiled. That moment mattered more than any apology. He wasn't becoming like me. He was becoming accountable.
Family stopped asking what I was doing next. They stopped predicting my outcomes. I think they finally understood that my life wasn't a group project anymore. And oddly enough, that understanding brought more peace than approval ever did. Late at night, I realized I hadn't felt resentment in a long time. Not toward my brother, not toward my parents, not even toward my past self. Resentment dies when boundaries become habits. I learned that you don't need dramatic exits to reclaim your life. Sometimes all it takes is one honest answer that doesn't bend. Everything else rearranges itself around that truth. That day when I typed "keep dreaming," I didn't know it would echo this far. I thought I was just saying no to a car. I was really saying yes to a life that didn't require me to be collateral for someone else's choices. And now, whenever a request comes wrapped in entitlement, I feel no rush. I pause. I listen. And I choose myself without apology. Because the strongest thing I ever did wasn't proving them wrong. It was finally refusing to live according to expectations that were never mine to carry. Time has a way of confirming the choices you make when no one is clapping. Years later, I can see how that single refusal protected dozens of decisions that followed. Better investments, better relationships, better use of my energy. When you don't mortgage your future for someone else's comfort, everything downstream changes. The story didn't end with fireworks. It ended quietly, with life moving forward, my brother building himself honestly, and me living my life aligned with my own choices. The message that once shook everything became just another archived memory, placed where it belonged, in the past. Peace, once earned, had become permanent. This was one of those endings.